The sidewalk was the expensive kind. Anna noticed this without meaning to, the particular quality of the paving stones. Fitted flush and level with the precision of work that costs money, pale gray in the afternoon light. Not a single crack. She had spent enough years on her knees scrubbing other people's floors to know the difference between surfaces that were maintained and surfaces that were built to never need maintaining. She was standing on the ladder, 50 feet ahead, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a house that was the architectural equivalent of a statement. She could see Marcus. He was in a suit she didn't recognize, custom. She understood from the way it sat on him. The kind of fit that comes from being measured rather than buying off a rack. He was laughing at something, his head tilted back in the way she remembered from 10 years ago when they were both young and had nothing, and the laugh had seemed like enough. He was holding a champagne bottle, refilling glasses, moving through the room with the ease of a man who has been in rooms like this long enough to believe he belongs in them. Beside him was a woman, 25 maybe, beautiful in the specific way of someone who has never had to think about being beautiful because the question has never been in doubt. She was holding an infant against her chest with the relaxed confidence of new motherhood, still in the stage where the baby is small enough to feel like a miracle and large enough to show off. At her feet, half hidden behind her dress, a toddler was circling with the determined locomotion of a child who has recently discovered running and has not yet discovered moderation. The toddler looked like Marcus. Anna had been standing on this sidewalk for 4 minutes, which was the amount of time it had taken her to get out of her car, walk to this point, and stop. She was wearing jeans she had owned for 6 years and a plain gray t-shirt she'd bought from a discount bin, and her hands, she looked at them now briefly, the way you look at something you know the shape of so well you've stopped seeing it, were the hands of someone who had spent a decade doing work that leaves marks. The calluses across her palms, the slight thickness of the knuckles, the one scar on her right index finger from the industrial cleaning equipment that had slipped 2 winters ago. She held a red folder, not a divorce petition. Marcus had told her in the brief conversations they managed each month that he was living in a studio apartment in the Millbrook district, surviving on ramen and determination, that the startup was 18 months from a Series A that would change everything. He had told her this with the sincerity of a man who has practiced sincerity enough times that it comes without effort. The folder contained a master promissory note for $2,140,000. In Anna's name. Marcus had missed his mortgage payment on Thursday, not because the money wasn't available. He had thrown this party instead. A lavish catered event for 50 guests to celebrate the 1-month milestone of a child he had never mentioned to his wife. The acceleration clause in the mortgage contract had been triggered at midnight Friday. Anna was the lender, had been for 3 weeks, since she had walked into the offices of Meridian Hard Capital, and placed $2.5 million on a conference table and purchased Marcus's debt at a premium while he was texting her to ask for rent money. She wasn't here to cry. She was here to take her house back, but to understand the folder, to understand how a woman who had been counting tip money into a wire transfer for 10 years had arrived on this sidewalk with a legal instrument that would end a man's parallel life in the next 30 minutes. You have to go back. Back to a diner that smelled like coffee and bacon grease, and the specific exhaustion of a place that never fully closes. Back to the beginning, which had looked, at the time, like love. Anna had been 24 when she married Marcus. She remembered that version of herself with the complicated tenderness of someone looking at an old photograph. The face familiar. The expression belonging to a person who still had certain things intact that would later not be intact. She had been in love with him in the way you can only be in love when you are young, and the world hasn't given you enough specific information yet. The kind of love that fills in gaps with what it wants to be true. Marcus was smart and charming, and had a quality she had found magnetic at 24, and now understood differently. The absolute certainty of a man who has decided what he deserves, and is simply waiting for the circumstances to catch up with his opinion of himself. They had been married 6 months when his parents fell ill, not one after the other, simultaneously, or close enough to feel that way. His father's heart, his mother's progression of a neurological condition that had been slow for years and then, as these things do, accelerated. Marcus had sat across from her at their small kitchen table. The apartment was 3 rooms, everything they owned in it, and laid out the situation with the gravity of a man making a sacrifice. "I need to go to the city," he said. "There's an opportunity, a tech space, a co-founder I've been talking to, something that could actually be real. If I can get there, get established, we could change everything for this family." for our future. Your parents, she said. They need someone, he said. Someone here who can check on them, who they know. He looked at her. I wouldn't ask if I had any other way. She had said yes, because she loved him, because the ask seemed reasonable, temporary, transitional, the kind of sacrifice that couples make when they are building towards something, because she was 24 and certain that the building was real. She had found the diner job first, because it had the earliest shift, 5 a.m. start, which suited her. Because the earlier she was occupied, the less time she had to think about how quiet the apartment was without him. Waitressing paid in cash, which mattered when you were sending the majority of what you made across the state to a man trying to launch a startup. She added the grocery store cashier position 3 months later, when Marcus's first request for money arrived with the specific framing that would become the template for the decade that followed. The breakthrough is coming. I just need to get through this month. The server costs are due. I'm so close. The cleaning company came in year 2, the weekends she had previously spent driving out to check on his parents. His mother had progressed to the point of requiring daily assistance by then, and Anna had arranged her schedule to provide it, which was another thing that happened incrementally, and then was simply the shape of her life. She had cared for Evelyn Hayes for 4 years, bathed her, dressed her, managed her medications, sat with her in the evenings when the confusion was bad and the nights were long. Richard, Marcus's father, had needed less direct care but more presence, someone to drive him to appointments, to make sure he was eating. He had died in year 3. Evelyn had lasted until year 6. Anna had been with her when she went. Marcus had been in the city. He had sent a text, "So sorry I couldn't be there, babe. It's been a brutal week. Love you. How are you holding up?" She had texted back, "I'm okay, miss you." She went peacefully. She had then driven home, showered, put on her uniform, and gone to the diner for the 5 a.m. shift because rent was due, and the transfer to Marcus was due, and the phone bill was due, and the only tool she had for all of those things was showing up. The voicemail happened on a Tuesday in October. She had finished the diner shift, had an hour before the grocery store, and was sitting in her car in the diner parking lot eating a sandwich she'd made at home, because the diner food cut into the margins. She called Marcus to tell him she was finally free, that Evelyn was gone, that the estate was being processed, that she could come to the city, that she could finally see his life. The call didn't connect to him. The automated carrier message said, "You have reached Marcus and Bella. Please leave a message for us or for the kids." For the kids, Anna sat in her car with the phone pressed to her ear and let the message play through to the tone and then the silence after. She did not leave a message. She sat for a long time with the phone in her lap, looking at the parking lot of the diner where she had worked for 10 years, at the cracked asphalt and the hand-painted sign and the car beside hers that needed new tires, and she thought about the word kids. Plural. She put the phone face down on the passenger seat. She opened the joint banking app, the one she had been depositing into and transferring from for 10 years, the one Marcus had set up and she had added herself to, the one she had always left largely to him to manage because she was tired, and he was the one in the city and he would handle it. She scrolled. The recent transactions assembled themselves into a picture she had not been looking at for 10 years, and which, now that she was looking, resolved with brutal clarity. A preschool, not tuition, the kind of large annual enrollment payment that private preschools in expensive zip codes charge. A number that took her a moment to accept as a real number. The previous fall, and the fall before that. A jewelry retailer. Diamond earrings, the receipt still linked in the transaction memo, 6 months ago. A transfer to an LLC she had never heard of. The shell company structure Marcus had apparently used to make the down payment on the property she was now standing outside of. The transfer was 3 years old. She had seen it and not asked because he had mentioned something about corporate restructuring, and she had been too tired to follow up. The baby stroller, a luxury brand whose price she had to look up, because the number didn't register as a number people spent on strollers until she confirmed it. She scrolled back to the beginning. She started adding. Her hands were shaking slightly, which she noticed and controlled, because her hands did not shake at work, and she had learned to extend that discipline to everything. She did the math. She did it again. She sat in the parking lot of the diner until her shift at the grocery store was 20 minutes away, and then she picked up her phone, and she typed a text to Marcus. His most recent message from that morning, "Miss you so much, baby. This month has been brutal. Server costs came in higher than expected. Could you send $2,000 if you can swing it? You're my rock. Love you so much." She looked at the text for a long time. Then she typed, "Sent, love you." She pressed send. She sat for 10 more seconds. Then she opened her contacts, scrolled to a number she had found the previous week during one of the 3 a.m. periods of sleeplessness that had been accumulating without a named cause for months, and pressed call. The phone rang twice. "Hargrove Investigations," a voice said. "I need to hire someone," Anna said. Her voice was even. Her hands had stopped shaking. "I need to know everything about my husband." She put the car in reverse. She had a shift to get to. The pie's name was Gerald Hargrove, and he had been doing this for 23 years. And he had learned in those 23 years that the clients who came to him already knowing were different from the clients who came hoping to be wrong. Anna had come knowing. He had understood that from the first call, the evenness of her voice, the specific questions she asked, the absence of the emotional static that most clients broadcast when they were still in the hoping to be wrong stage. She had given him Marcus's full name, his city address, the name of the LLC she had found in the bank statements, and the voicemail text verbatim, recited from memory without referring to notes. He had called her back 14 days later. "I can meet you Thursday," he said. "I'd rather do this in person." "I work Thursday," Anna said. "I'm off Sunday at 2. "Sunday at 2, he said. She had driven 2 hours to his office in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparer, wearing the same jeans she wore to everything, because she owned 3 pairs and the other 2 were for work. Hargrove's office was small and organized in the way of someone who has processed a great deal of information and has learned that disorder costs time. He had a folder on the desk when she arrived. He did not make small talk. He opened the folder. "Marcus David Hayes," he said. "Age 36, residing at 14 Wentworth Gate, the Ashgrove community since 3 years ago." He turned a page. The property was purchased through Bel Air Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware, sole member listed as Marcus Hayes. The purchase was financed through a hard money private lender called Meridian Capital Group. High interest, short term, the kind of financing that traditional banks won't touch because the debt-to-income ratio doesn't qualify. "How much?" $2,140,000 at 11% annual interest. He looked at her over the folder. "He's been making the payments, barely. The cash flow analysis suggests he's dependent on regular wire transfers from a joint account to cover the monthly obligation." Anna thought about the tip money, the $5 bills counted out on her kitchen table. "The woman," she said. Hargrove turned another page. "Belafontaine Hayes, age 25. They were married at the Ashgrove County Courthouse 18 months ago." He paused. "Prior to that marriage, there was a filing in this county indicating that Marcus Hayes had divorced Anna Hayes." He set a document in front of her. "This is that filing." Anna looked at it. Her signature was on the bottom. She had never signed this document. She had never seen this document before this moment. "Forgery," Hargrove said. Not gently, directly, the way a doctor says a diagnosis, because softening it doesn't change it. "The signature is close but not consistent with your other documented signatures. A forensic document examiner could confirm it in under an hour." Anna looked at her signature on the page, at the version of her name that Marcus had produced to legally erase the marriage he had decided was inconvenient, while continuing to use the income it generated. She turned the page herself. "Children," the toddler she had seen through the window was 2 years and 3 months old, named Marcus Jr. The infant was 5 weeks, named Lily. Both children were registered to Marcus and Bella Hayes. Marcus had a son who was 2 years old. Anna had been sending him money for 2 years. Had been wiring it from the account she filled with tip money and grocery store wages and weekend cleaning hours. The account that Marcus had access to, had been drawing from, had been using to pay the mortgage on a house he shared with a woman and 2 children he had never mentioned. She turned another page. "The LLC," Hargrove said. "Bel Air Holdings also holds 2 vehicles, a Range Rover and a Porsche Cayenne, both registered to the LLC. There's a cosigner on the original vehicle financing." He pointed to a line on the document. "Anna's social security number." She had not cosigned anything. She sat with that for a moment, with the specific quality of a realization that keeps expanding, that you think you have grasped and then reveals another dimension. He had used her name, had used the number that was tied to her credit, her identity, her existence as a documented person, to finance vehicles she had never sat in, registered to an LLC she had never heard of, driven by a woman whose name she had learned from a voicemail 48 hours after his parents' estate was finally settled. She had spent 10 years caring for his parents. She had spent 10 years sending him money. She had spent 10 years in shoes with holes in them, and a kitchen table where she counted tip money by denomination, and an apartment that still smelled faintly of the industrial cleaning solution she used on weekends, and had never fully been able to scrub out of the floorboards. And he had spent those 10 years building a life. Not the startup. There was no startup, Hargrove had checked. The tech company Marcus mentioned had been dissolved after 18 months with no product and no revenue. The co-founder he'd referenced was real. They had not spoken in 7 years. There had never been a breakthrough around the corner. There had only been Anna's. She closed the folder. "I need to know about the lender," she said. "Meridian Capital." Hargrove looked at her. The look of a man who has seen many things and is currently seeing something he hasn't seen before. The specific quality of a person who has received devastating information and has already, without visible transition, begun converting it into a plan. "They're based in the financial district," he said carefully. "Hard money lenders operate differently from banks. They sell debt. If a borrower defaults, they can assign the note to a third party." He paused. "Is that something you're thinking about?" "My parents passed away 8 months ago," Anna said. "Their estate sold to a commercial developer. The proceeds belong entirely to me. There's no will contest. It's a clean transfer." She looked at him. $2.5 million. Hargrove was quiet. "I need to know if Meridian would sell me Marcus's mortgage," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. "I can make some calls," he said. The meeting at Meridian Capital happened on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks after the Sunday in Hargrove's office. Anna had taken the day off from the diner, the first weekday she had taken off in 4 years, which required a conversation with her manager that she kept brief by explaining it as a family matter, which was accurate in ways she didn't specify. She drove 2 hours to the city in the car with the cracked dashboard she'd been meaning to fix for 18 months. The Meridian offices were on the 14th floor of a building that had the specific impersonality of financial services architecture. Glass and steel. Nothing that invited you to stay longer than necessary. Everything communicating that the people who worked here dealt in numbers and preferred the numbers to the people attached to them. The managing partner was a man named Calloway who had the compact efficiency of someone who had spent his career in rooms where time was a currency and wasting it was the primary offense. He had reviewed the file Anna's attorney had sent over. He had reviewed the mortgage documentation. He looked at Anna across the conference table with the evaluative attention of someone who prices risk for a living. "The note is currently performing," he said. "Barely. The borrower is consistently late by 4 to 7 days, which keeps him technically out of default but costs him penalty fees that are compounding." He folded his hands. "We don't typically sell performing notes." "I'll pay a premium," Anna said. "How much of a premium?" 5% over the remaining principal. She had done this math. Had done it at the kitchen table where she counted tip money, which was the same table with a legal pad and a calculator. In the particular focus state she entered when a problem required her complete attention. Calloway looked at her. "That's a significant commitment." "I'm aware of what it is." "The borrower is your husband." "Yes." He looked at her for a moment longer. The look of a man who has been in this business for a long time and has seen many configurations of human motivation arriving at his conference table, and is currently categorizing this one. "The note has an acceleration clause," he said. "Standard for our instruments. Single missed payment triggers immediate full balance demand or we exercise the collateral lien. At the premium you're offering, that clause transfers with the note." "I know," Anna said. Another pause. "We'll need the funds in escrow by Friday," he said. "They'll be there Thursday." She had signed the documents with the pen Calloway provided. A good pen. The kind kept in offices like this where pens are chosen to communicate something about the weight of what they're used to sign. She had signed her name on documents transferring $2,140,000 worth of mortgage debt into a holding company her attorney had incorporated the previous week. The holding company was called Hayes Asset Recovery, LLC. She had named it herself. Marcus had texted 4 times in the 3 weeks between Hargrove's office and the Meridian signing. "Hey babe, you okay? Haven't heard much from you. Things are really tight this month. Any chance you could swing $3,000? The server migration cost more than expected. Miss you so much. Can't wait for things to stabilize so I can come visit. You mean everything to me." "Anna, everything okay?" Getting a little worried. She had responded to each one. Brief, warm, the text voice of a tired woman who loved her husband and was just busy. She had sent the $3,000 because stopping abruptly would have alerted him, and she needed him not alerted. She had sent it from the joint account, which she had left undisturbed for exactly this reason. The money she had sent him in those 3 weeks, $3,000 plus the regular amounts, had gone, according to Hargrove's continued monitoring of the joint account's outflows, toward a catered event deposit and what appeared to be a champagne order from a luxury beverage supplier. He was planning a party. She knew about the party. Hargrove had flagged it. The Instagram posts from Bella's account, public, documenting the preparations for a 1-month milestone celebration for baby Lily. The guest list appeared to be 50 people. The caterer was a company whose minimum event cost Anna had looked up and found to be higher than 2 months of her combined income from all 3 jobs. He was planning a party with her money. She had read this in the blue light of her phone at 2 in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table in the apartment that smelled of cleaning solution. And she had felt not rage, which would have been easier, something colder than rage. The specific, clarifying temperature of a person who has arrived at the furthest point of a very long road and can now see with complete clarity exactly where they are. She had opened the mortgage documents her attorney had forwarded, her copy, the holding company's copy, the instrument she now owned. She had read through them slowly, the way she read things that mattered, which was the way she read everything because she had never had the luxury of skimming. The acceleration clause was on page 17. In the event of borrower's failure to remit the scheduled monthly payment within 48 hours of the due date, the note holder reserves the right to declare the entire outstanding principal balance immediately due and payable, and to initiate foreclosure proceedings against the collateral property without further notice. The mortgage payment was due on the 1st of the month. The party was scheduled for the 1st of the month. Anna had set her phone down. She had looked at the kitchen table, the same table for 10 years, the same 4 chairs, the same surface where she had sorted tip money and eaten meals alone, and made plans that turned out to be the plans of a person who didn't have all the information. She had Marcus's most recent text open on her phone. Just checking in, love you, things are looking up, I can feel it. She did not reply. She had replied to every text for 10 years. She did not reply to this one. She put the phone face down, and she went to bed, and she slept better than she had slept in a very long time. The sleep of someone who has made all the decisions that can be made and is now simply waiting for the calendar to do its work. The 1st of the month was 9 days away. She had 9 days. She was going to use every one of them. The champagne glass didn't shatter. It hit the marble floor of the foyer with the particular sound of good crystal. A clean, resonant crack, not an explosion. The kind of sound that carries further than it should in a room that has gone suddenly quiet. Bella stood with her hand still in the shape of holding something, her eyes on Anna, her face in the process of reorganizing around information it had not been given and was now receiving all at once. "What did you say?" she said. "His wife," Anna said, 10 years in April. From the party, the room visible through the archway to the right, the 50 guests with their champagne and their plates of food from the catering company whose minimum spend Anna had looked up on a website. She heard the conversation falter. Not stop entirely, not yet, but the specific shift in ambient sound that happens when a room becomes aware that something is occurring elsewhere. Then Marcus appeared. He came through the archway with the automatic social ease of a host leaving his guests briefly, a smile already assembled. The kind of smile that is deployed for unexpected situations that need to be managed before they become visible to everyone watching. He was wearing the suit she had seen through the window, custom, fitted, the suit of a man who had decided what he was. He saw Anna. The smile left his face, not gradually. The way the champagne glass had left Bella's hand, the shape of a thing and then the absence of it, too fast for the in-between. Anna, his voice was barely a voice. "Marcus," she said. The room through the archway had gone quiet now. Fully quiet. 50 people with champagne glasses and catered food, arranged in a house built with tip money, listening. Anna walked through the front door. She crossed the marble foyer, the expensive marble, the kind that never needs maintaining, and she set the red folder on the statement table beside the flowers. She opened it. She did not raise her voice. She had never needed to raise her voice to be heard by people who were paying attention, and everyone in this foyer was paying attention. "You missed your mortgage payment on Thursday," she said. "The 48-hour grace period expired at midnight last night." She turned a page in the folder. The acceleration clause was triggered. The full balance, $2,140,000, is now immediately due and payable. Marcus said her name again. A different register this time, not the flatness of shock, but something underneath it. The sound of a structure realizing it is losing load-bearing support. Anna, I purchased your mortgage note 3 weeks ago, she said. From Meridian Capital Group, Hayes Asset Recovery LLC is now the sole holder of your debt. She looked at him directly. I am the bank, Marcus, and you are foreclosed upon. The room through the archway had produced a sound, not words, but the collective intake of breath that a group of people makes when they are processing something that changes the shape of what they understood to be true. Bella had not moved from the doorway. She was looking at Marcus, not at Anna, at Marcus, with the specific quality of attention that arrives when a person is rapidly reassembling everything they have believed about their life, and the structure keeps producing the wrong answer. Marcus. Her voice was different than it had been at the door, the social confidence gone, something more exposed underneath. What is she talking about? Marcus turned toward her. Anna watched him reach for the version of himself that had always been able to manage situations. The warmth, the certainty, the absolute conviction of a man who believes he can explain his way through anything. He found it partially. It's complicated, he said. Bella, I promise I can explain. She said 10 years. Bella's voice was very even now, in the way that voices go even when the person speaking is using all available resources to remain in control. She said she's been your wife for 10 years. We got married 18 months ago. She looked at Anna, then back at Marcus. We have 2 children. I know, Marcus said. Bella, please, The divorce papers, Anna said, because this was the information Bella needed and withholding it served no one. He forged my signature. The divorce was never legal. Your marriage isn't valid. The silence that followed was the longest silence of the afternoon. Bella looked at the folder on the statement table, at the foyer, at the flowers she had chosen, and the marble she had chosen, and the house she had chosen, and the man standing in it who had, she was now understanding, constructed an entire architecture of reality for her to live inside of without informing her that the foundation was someone else. She set her champagne glass down on the table beside the folder, deliberately, with the careful control of a woman who is deciding in real time what kind of person she is going to be in this moment. She walked to the staircase. She went upstairs. The sound of her heels on the marble steps was very distinct in the quiet house. Marcus watched her go. Then he turned to Anna, and she saw something she had not expected. Not the charm, not the management, not the performance of sincerity he had been deploying for 10 years. Something underneath all of that. The face of a man who has been running a very long time and has finally run out of distance. Anna, his voice was quiet. I can fix this. She looked at him. She thought about the tip money. The $5 bills, the hole in the left shoe, Evelyn in the hospital bed, the voicemail, the forged signature, the preschool payment, the diamond earrings, the decade. No, she said, you can't. She turned toward the front door. Behind her, she heard it. The sound of the entrance to the gated community, the particular register of official vehicles on the Flagstone Drive. 2 county sheriff's deputies came through the front door she had left open, moving with the unhurried authority of people who have arrived at a property with legal documentation and do not anticipate resistance. The senior deputy looked at Marcus. Marcus David Hayes. Marcus looked at the deputies, at the folder on the table, at the guests visible through the archway, 50 people who had driven to Ashgrove for a celebration and were now witnesses to something else entirely. Yes, he said. It was barely audible. Sir, we have a foreclosure execution order for this property and an eviction notice effective immediately. We also have a warrant. The deputy glanced at the second document in his hand. For your arrest on charges of bigamy and mortgage fraud. I need you to come with us. The archway to the party had filled with guests. 50 people standing with glasses and plates, watching. Marcus Hayes in his custom-fitted suit, in the house built with someone else's tip money and someone else's labor and someone else's decade, looked at Anna one final time. She was already turning away. Bella left that evening with the children. Anna had learned this from her attorney, who had been in contact with Bella's family attorney by the following morning. Bella had called her parents within the hour, had packed what she could pack, had driven to her mother's house in the neighboring county. She had retained a lawyer by Sunday afternoon. She was cooperating fully with the bigamy investigation and would later provide a statement that corroborated every material fact Anna had brought to the sheriff's department. Anna did not feel satisfaction about Bella specifically. She had thought about this in the days that followed, about what she felt toward the woman who had been living in her marriage, in her house, with her money. What she arrived at was not generosity, exactly, but accuracy. Bella had been deceived, had built her life on the same fraudulent foundation as Anna, just from a different angle, with a different decade missing from the picture. That was its own particular kind of damage, and it was Marcus's damage to own. He owned a great deal in the weeks that followed. The bigamy charge carried a sentence. The mortgage fraud, the forged documents, the social security number, the Shell LLC, carried several. His attorney was, by all accounts, not encouraging about the prospects. The VC community in which he had positioned himself as a successful entrepreneur learned, with the speed that information travels in closed professional circles, that the successful entrepreneur was facing felony charges and had been evicted from his home by the wife he had legally never divorced. The invitations to things stopped arriving. The mansion sold in 6 weeks. Anna's holding company received the proceeds, the full market value, which in the Ashgrove community and at that moment in the real estate cycle exceeded what Marcus had paid for it by a margin that her attorney described as favorable, and which Anna described to herself as enough. She did not attend the closing. She had Douglas, the estate manager her parents had trusted for 30 years, handle the transaction details. She was, by that point, in the process of relocating. The apartment with the cleaning solution smell went to a young woman looking for her first place, and Anna handed over the keys with the particular feeling of setting something down that you have carried past the point of usefulness. She moved to the coast. The business took 8 months to open, a hospitality consulting company, which was a way of saying that she knew the operational reality of service industry businesses from the inside out, from both the labor side and now the capital side, and that combination was rarer and more valuable than most people understood. The first client was a restaurant that needed its back-of-house systems rebuilt from the ground up. The second was a small hotel whose management infrastructure had grown chaotic with expansion. She was good at it. She was good at it in the way that people are good at things when the work connects to something true about who they are, the efficiency, the precision, the absolute understanding of what it costs to do things correctly versus what it costs to do them badly. She hired people who had worked in kitchens and on cleaning crews and in diners at 5 a.m. She paid them correctly. She did not scrub any more floors. There was an evening, 8 months after the mansion, when she walked down to the water from the house she had rented on the coast while she looked for something to buy. The sun was doing its particular evening thing. The light across the water, the kind that doesn't ask anything of you and doesn't withhold anything either. She had a glass of something in her hand, and the kind of quiet that comes not from the absence of sound, but from the absence of the specific interior noise she had been living with for a decade, the constant calculation of margins, the management of scarcity, the low-grade vigilance of a person who has learned to exist in a situation that requires ongoing management just to remain survivable. She looked at her hands. The calluses were fading. Not gone, they were structural at this point, the product of years, not something that resolves in months, but softening. The hands of a person who no longer does the work that produced them, which was a different kind of marking. She thought about the folder on the marble table, about the sound of the champagne glass on the floor, about the moment Marcus had said, "I can fix this," and she had said *no, and turned away, which had been the simplest sentence and the simplest movement, and also the most complete thing she had done in 10 years. She had scrubbed floors for a decade to build a future for a husband who was using her money to build a family with someone else. She had walked out of his mansion. He didn't have a future. He didn't have a family. He didn't have a dime of her money left. And she was standing at the water's edge in the evening light with her hands going soft, and a business that was hers, and a life that was hers, and the very particular freedom of a person who has paid every debt that was real and discharged every debt that wasn't and has nothing left to carry. She raised her glass toward the water, not to Marcus, not to the decade, to the woman at the kitchen table with the tip money, who had counted out the $5 bills and wired the transfers and worn the shoes with the holes and sat with the dying and kept going, and kept going, and kept going, until she had enough. "Okay," Anna said quietly, to no one and to herself. She turned toward the house. She went inside,